I'm Clark Dummett, the founder of Dummett Fraden. For the decades that I have been practicing law, ignition interlocks have gone from a very expensive device to a cheaper and cheaper device as the technology has gotten better. Most recently, we have 3 companies in North Carolina that are now competing to provide ignition interlock devices. Originally, we only had one company that was Monotech, and it was up to $120 a month. Now that we have 3 companies, we see price wars going on and prices coming down to as little as $45 a month when they're under a special. So shop around, you should be able to find competitive pricing on ignition interlocks now. Different companies have different installation times. I'd give it a couple of hours, but you can call ahead and ask the technician how much time it will take. All they're doing is installing the device into your ignition and then leaving a handheld device in the center console where you can blow into it to get the car started. It usually takes less than a few hours. We get asked often by people who have multiple vehicles under their name how many of them have to have the ignition interlock, and this is an extremely complicated question. If you are under an alcohol content restriction based upon a limited driving privilege, then you only have to have the ignition interlock on the car that you're driving, so you only put it on one vehicle. However, after you get your license restored, if you remain under an interlock for 45 days, or if you're under a conditional restoration and you have a 3-year interlock requirement, it's required under 20-17.8 that you have the ignition interlock on every vehicle that is currently registered in your name. So what happens when you have 3 vehicles registered in your name? You need all 3 of them to have the ignition interlock. It's not the case if the vehicle is owned by you but registered in somebody else's name. So if your spouse or one of your children has the vehicle registered, then it's not required to be on that vehicle. So you need to double check the exact registration of every vehicle when you come under an ignition interlock restriction. Unfortunately, none of the interlock companies have built a machine that can get installed on a motorcycle. The device itself is several $1,000s, and if it was hanging off the side of a motorcycle, it would get stolen. So none of the companies will allow their device to be put on a motorcycle. Thus, unfortunately, while legally you could drive a motorcycle with an interlock, no company that I'm aware of will yet put one on a motorcycle. So you're stuck not using a motorcycle while you have an ignition interlock requirement. The alternative would be to get a moped of 50 cc's or less, and you can drive that without the ignition interlock.